That we must suffer into truth. We cannot sleep, and drop by drop at the heart, the pain of pain remembered comes again, and we resist. This quote here holds one of the most important thoughts to come out of Aeschylus's Oresteia, the trilogy, the only known trilogy to have survived from classical Greece, and it is a great one. This quotation comes from the first chorus in the Agamemnon, the first part of the trilogy, the first play in the trilogy, and in a way it epitomizes everything Aeschylus has to say about life. We suffer into truth. We cannot sleep because of the pain remembered. In other words, our past coming to haunt us again and again, and a resistance to these truths. Life is suffering, Aeschylus is telling us, and it is only through our own efforts at self-exploration, the willingness to go inside and battle with our demons, that any hope of redemption can arise. Aeschylus is not only considered one of the great tragedians of classical Greece, he is really one of the great innovators of the art form. He lived in a period of time that Karl Jaspers, the German philosopher, has referred to as the Axial Age. You have an explosion of new ways of thinking all across the world. You have Lao Tze in Confucius in China, you have in India the Upanishads and Buddha, and in Palestine you have the prophets of the Old Testament, and in Greece, of course, you have this incredible explosion in science and philosophy and drama and architecture. The two interlocking myths that lie behind the Oresteia is the story of the Trojan War and the curse in the house of Atreus. If you think of the curse in the house of Atreus as being a psychic problem that gets transferred from generation to generation, then I think we'll leave that story as what it is. Fundamentally, it is a story we all encounter in our lives of our families wounding through unconsciousness. Agamemnon returns from the Trojan War a hero, but it can't be forgotten what he sacrificed, his own daughter. Denia, thinking she is to be wed, is instead slaughtered so that the Greek fleet can sail towards Troy. Archetypally, we know what this points to. We know that the destruction the Trojans will face, the rape, the pillaging, the disproportionate devastation that leads the Greeks to acts of atrocity can only happen because something symbolized by that young girl has been sacrificed. A sense of connection to oneself and the others is what is encoded in the feminine. The thing is, in the Iliad, the men fight and then they cry together, atoning for what they have done. It is one of the tragic consequences of our disconnection from our feeling function that leaves so many suffering in the world. These ancient stories point to just that. Nothing forces us to know what we do not want to know except pain. And the way into that pain is by shining the light of awareness or consciousness into things and into our past and into our family history. And this is what this trilogy does. So Agamemnon arrives to find his wife, Clytemnestra, being a little bit overdone in her rhetoric about her own misery in his absence and how much she's missed him. And she's made the servant spread out embroidered cloths for him to walk on. Now he knows, a part of him knows he shouldn't walk on those cloths. He knows that it is almost tempting the gods to do so, but his ego really can't keep him back. See, those cloths are lavish garments or tapestries. They're not carpets. They are not really suited to what he is meant to do. They symbolize trampling on something fine, just like he's done by sacrificing his daughter and the feeling function. A part of him knows, so he complains, but then he walks. A man not in contact with his feeling side is capable of trampling on all sorts of lovely things, as we will see from what happens to Cassandra. When he does walk in, Cassandra finally speaks. She tells the chorus her own story and prophesizes what will happen to Agamemnon and herself once they are both inside that house. Now Cassandra's cursed. She had promised to sleep with the god Apollo, and he gave her the gift of prophecy, but then she went back on her word. And Apollo cursed her by making it impossible for anyone ever to believe her. So as she tells the chorus she's about to be murdered and what's going to be happening to Agamemnon, they do not believe her. Perhaps this points to the fact that intuition cannot really ever mate with rationality, as represented by Apollo. They're very different ways to apprehend reality. After Cassandra enters the house, the chorus has time to only sing about 26 lines before Agamemnon is heard crying that he has been struck. Clytemnestra comes out, standing over the bodies of her victims, and announces to all that the deed has been done and that she feels no remorse. Now, in the second play of the Oresteia, the Libation Bearers, Electra, one of the daughters of Agamemnon and Clytemnestra, goes to her father's grave where she encounters Orestes, her brother who has been exiled. Now, Orestes has heard that his father has been murdered by his mother, and he is ready to come back and take revenge. That is essentially what this second play is about. Orestes goes back, disguised. The mother senses that this might be Orestes at some point, but she does not heed that intuitive hunch until it's too late, and Orestes reveals himself to be the son, at which point she stresses that he cannot kill his mother. She is, after all, who gave birth to him, though she has not raised him. Orestes falters, but eventually gives in to his rational side and his need for vengeance, and kills her and her lover Aegisthus. Now here's the problem. Apollo, the god of rational thought, has ordered him to do something rational: kill your mother to avenge your father's death. But the Furies, who protect family members, do not look kindly on this action, and they now start to haunt him. Now, here we enter the third play, the Eumenides, where this gets resolved. And how does it get resolved? Well, the god Apollo actually tells Orestes, go to Athens and get justice there, through the court system, with Athena, the goddess, as the judge, and a jury will decide what his fate is. So Apollo is his defense lawyer, the Furies are the prosecution, and Athena will serve as a judge. After a trial in which Apollo argues that a woman can not necessarily be considered a mother, as she is only a vehicle to carry a child, something which doesn't seem to convince the jurors, Orestes is finally acquitted. But here's the really important part. Athena ensures the transformation of the psyche and the society at the same time by converting the Furies into the kindly ones who will now guard over Athens. Now, what does this mean? Well, on a practical level, it means the curse on the house of Atreus is lifted, and Orestes can now go on to live a normal life where he does not pass this crazy curse that has been hovering over the house of Atreus since time immemorial. But on a bigger sense, an archetypal sense, it means that the way through suffering is through transformation. And the transformation of the Furies into the kindly ones is from rage to compassion. At the end of the day, the story pits two sides. On one side, blood, vengeance, irrationality, night, earth, wildness. And on the other side, there is justice and reason, including logic and rhetoric, day, sky, civilization, and so on. Both these sides of the society and the psyche must be integrated for something to be healthy. And this play brilliantly allows for that resolution through Athena's judgment. Now, Athena's interesting. She's a female goddess, but she has emerged from the head of Zeus. So she has a great combination of male and female qualities. So she is eminently suited to this role. The trial brings to an end the age of heroes. We are now in the twilight of the gods of the Greek age. The gods have become integrated. The gods are forces that can be seen as something within the self. They are not up there, they are within. Over 2,000 years later, the great psychologist Karl Jung would say that the Olympians had become diseases. The gods had become diseases. Zeus no longer rules Olympus, he said, but rather the solar plexus, and produces curious specimens for the doctors' consulting rooms, or disorders the brains of politicians and journalists who unwittingly let loose psychic epidemics on the world. Becoming conscious means reconciling the opposites and creating a third. That's what Carl Jung said as well. And in Orestes, we see that coming to fruition. The circle of consciousness has widened through the confrontation between those two opposing forces, and we have arrived at a new level. All of this, of course, has been done through suffering. As Ben Okri wrote, the most authentic thing about us is our capacity to create, to overcome, to endure, to transform, and to be greater than our suffering.